Tonight we step away from the warriors and the kings. Tonight we look at the smallest Vikings, the children. How did they grow up? What did they play with? What did they learn? I am Dr. Complis, Sleep History, and tonight I will share with you 100 things about the lives of Viking children. 100 small windows into a world 1,000 years gone. A world of wooden toys and spinning wool, and the smell of a longhouse fire, of children running barefoot along a fjord in summer, of grandmothers teaching granddaughters to weave, of small boys watching their fathers sharpen axes in the firelight. So, settle in. Close your eyes, and let the Viking Age carry you to sleep. Fact 1. When a child was born, the father held in his hands not just new life, but a choice. He could lift it close, acknowledging its place in their family, under their roof. Or he might hesitate, and that pause could seal the child's fate, leaving it vulnerable, exposed to the elements, a harsh mercy in an unforgiving world. Fact 2. The naming ceremony, Osavatni, was a sacred rite, the father's voice resonating through the longhouse as he sprinkled his newborn with water and spoke its name aloud. That moment, that sound, made the child a person under Norse law, bound by rights and duties, woven into the fabric of their community. Fact 3. Names were not chosen lightly, for they carried echoes of the past. A child might bear the name of a grandparent or ancestor, carrying forth their luck, their hamingja, like a torch passed from one generation to the next. Fact 4. Sometimes, names were whispers of birth circumstances, a storm's fury, a crossroads intersection, an unusual feature etched into soft skin. These names were stories in themselves, reminders of where life began. Fact 5. Some parents chose names that held power within their letters, rune words for strength or protection. Others sought favor from specific gods, hoping their child might catch the eye of Thor or Freya, Odin's wisdom, or Freya's love. Fact 6. Midwives, Jordmor, earth mothers, attended all births, respected women who knew herbs to ease pain and hands to guide difficult deliveries. They stood at the threshold of life, helping welcome new souls into the world they knew so well. Fact 7. Infant mortality was high, a shadow that loomed over every family. 1 in 3 children might not see their 5th year. Parents knew this, felt it like a chill wind, and so they waited, held off grief until after the naming ceremony, as if speaking the child's name aloud might somehow seal its fate. Fact 8. Breastfeeding continued for years, 2 or 3, nourishing young bodies and forging bonds that transcended blood. Wet nurses stepped in when mothers couldn't, neighbors and relatives becoming surrogate mothers, their milk a lifeline to another's child. Fact 9. Fostering was common, children sent away to be raised by other families. It wasn't abandonment, but alliance building, an honor rather than rejection. Families intertwined like braided hair, bound together not just by blood, but by choice. Fact 10. Foster parents, fostri, were as close as kin. Foster brothers grew up side by side, expected to lay down their lives for each other if need be. Their bond was forged in shared meals, stories told by firelight, a life lived together under one roof. Fact 11. Amulets hung in cradles, carved animal bones and amber beads swaying gently above sleeping babes. Thor's hammer pendants guarded them from evil spirits, symbols of protection against the unseen threats that lurked in the dark. Fact 12. Cradles dangled from rafters high above the central fire of the longhouse. Babies swung softly, rocked by warmth and smoke, lulled by the rhythm of life below. Voices raised in song or laughter, the clatter of wooden dishes, the crackle of flames. Fact 13. First solid foods were not spoon-fed, but mouth to mouth, chewed by mother then passed to child. Or perhaps it was porridge, made from barley and milk, its warmth filling small bellies, its taste a promise of meals yet to come. Fact 14. Twins were considered either blessing or omen, depending on the circumstances of their birth. Some saw them as gifts from the gods, others as signs of trouble ahead. Stars above guided interpretations, their patterns read like runes by those who understood such things. Fact 15. Children born with differences might bear marks of supernatural touch, positive or negative omens. A crooked finger could be a sign of greatness, a hierolip, a warning of hardship to come. Some were seen as destined for great things, others for struggle. Either way, they were watched closely, their lives read like ancient texts. Fact 16. The first winter was the most dangerous, a test of will and endurance. A child who survived it had proven themselves, earned their place in the family under the sky's vast canvas. They had weathered the storm and emerged unbroken. Fact 17. Children of thralls were born into servitude, belonging not to parents but to slave owners. Their lives were tied to their masters' whims, their fates subject to laws that treated them as property rather than people. Fact 18. Children of mixed status occupied ambiguous legal spaces. Free father, thrall mother. It varied by region, custom. Some were freedoms in waiting, others bound by chains they couldn't see but felt heavy all the same. Fact 19. The fetch, filja, spirit animal, might be visible at birth to those with sight beyond sight. It was said to hover above the newborn, a reflection of their true self, their destiny etched into its form. Wise ones watched for it, read what they could from its shape and shadow. Fact 20. A newborn Norse child was more than just new life. They were continuation, link in a chain stretching back through generations, forward into unknown tomorrows. Their name echoed with ancestors' voices, their luck carried Hummingja's weight, their spirit animal bore witness to their true self. They were not merely born, but woven into the tapestry of their people's history, threads in an ancient, ongoing story. Fact 21. Small hands once gripped these carved wooden toys, smoothing their surfaces with love and use. Picture them now, in the soft glow of a longhouse fire. Tiny horses, their manes etched with care, little ships with oars that spin, human figures standing tall, each one unique, each one a story waiting to be told by those childhood lips. Fact 22. Miniature weapons they carried, these young Vikings to be. Wooden swords and shields, carved with pride, not for mere play but for practice in valor's art. They learned early the weight of responsibility, the balance of power, as they mimicked their elders' battles by the hearth. Fact 23. Toy longships danced on imaginary waters, guided by tiny hands. Some had holes for masts, others bore miniature oars, all echoing the great ships that carried clans across vast seas. They sailed these replicas through the air, whispering tales of distant lands and epic voyages. Fact 24. Knucklebones tumbled through Norse nights, tossed and caught in patterns as old as time itself. Sheep ankle bones, transformed by eager fingers into tools of amusement, their clatter a rhythmic accompaniment to life's endless dance. Fact 25. Rivers, fjords, and the sea, their playgrounds, their training grounds. Every Norse child knew the water's embrace, its cold kiss, its liberating freedom. To swim was not just to live, it was to claim one's birthright as a child of the North. Fact 26. Upon skis they stood, barely 4 summers old, balancing precariously before pushing off into winter's vast expanse. Skiing was no sport, but a necessity, learned early for travel's sake, carving paths through snow that would soon become second nature. Fact 27. Nefataful unfolded on boards of wood or cloth, its grid a battlefield where strategy ruled supreme. One player defended the king, the other sought his capture. Children learned this game young, their minds sharpened by its complexities, their hearts thrilled by its contests. Fact 28. Glyma taught them strength and control, formal wrestling that honed reflexes and patience. 6 or 7 summers old, they'd lock grips, learning not just combat, but respect, humility, the art of yielding to gain advantage. Fact 29. Leather bulls stuffed with wool or hair, kicked and thrown in games echoing handball's joyous chaos. Laughter filled the air as children ran, leapt, tumbled, their bodies learning harmony through play. Fact 30. Foot races tested young legs against the earth, competitions that echoed through saga's pages. Heroes were forged on such tracks, their speed and endurance honed under Scandinavia's vast skies. Fact 31. Cats curled in laps, dogs lay at feet, birds perched on fingers. Norse children kept pets, creatures of comfort and companionship. Archaeologists find them buried with cats or dogs, testament to bonds that transcended life and death. Fact 32. Polar bear cubs and white foxes played under Norse Greenland roofs, tamed by childish hands. Exotic gifts for European nobles, these wild friends were loved first by children who made their homes in ice's realm. Fact 33. Lullabies lilted through longhouses at nightfall, rhythmic alliterative patterns soothing little ears to sleep. Mother's voice, soft as embers glow, sang ancient melodies that echoed skaldic verses' cadence. Fact 34. Storytelling painted tapestries on young minds, myths of Odin and Thor, hero sagas, ancestor tales woven into fabric of familial lore. By firelight, voices spun magic from shadows, creating worlds within worlds for attentive eyes. Fact 35. Dolls dressed in fabric, long decayed, stood silent vigil amidst excavation dirt. Small carved human figures, some still bearing traces of clothing once lovingly placed upon them, each one a reflection of childhood's tender care. Fact 36. Winter's long nights confined children indoors where games filled the hours. Word games challenged wits, riddle contests teased minds, dice rolled across tables as laughter echoed through rafters high above. Fact 37. Summer days stretched endlessly, sunlight barely yielding to twilight's advance. Children played outdoors until midnight, their freedom bounded only by horizon's edge and parents' gentle calls. Fact 38. Fishing lines cast into waters, simple traps set in streams. Children contributed to the table, their efforts respected, their catch celebrated. The satisfaction of providing, however small, was theirs alone to savor. Fact 39. Forests and coastlines beckoned, inviting exploration, adventure. Norse children roamed freely, their world vast and untamed, each discovery etched into memories that would last a lifetime. Fact 40. Play was serious business among the Norse. No sharp divide existed between game and lesson. Every activity bore purpose, every moment held potential for growth, for learning, for becoming. Thus did they shape future warriors, explorers, thinkers, one joyful, purposeful step at a time. Fact 41. The Norse way of learning was as vast and untamed as their lands. There were no formal schools, no stone buildings with desks in rows. Instead, children absorbed knowledge like a sponge takes on water, watching, helping, gradually being given more responsibility. It began at the hearth, where stories were woven into the tapestry of the longhouse, warmth and wisdom entwined. Fact 42. Fact, around 5 or 6 summers old, boys started their apprenticeship with tools. They were handed small knives, barely longer than their fingers, to carve softwood into simple shapes. The feel of iron in their hands was a revelation, heavy yet alive. They learned how to care for these tools, sharpening them on stones worn smooth by time and use. It was not just about the task at hand, it was about respect, patience, and understanding the language of metal. Fact 43. Girls embarked on their own journey around 4 or 5 winters old. The drop spindle became their first companion, a small wooden marvel that spun wool into thread under their curious hands. It was not easy at first, the rhythm eluded them, the thread tangled. But they persisted, as children do when they sense the importance of what they're learning. Their mothers and grandmothers guided them with gentle words and steady hands, until the spindle began to sing its ancient song. Fact 44. Both boys and girls learned to ride horses almost as soon as they could walk. It was not a luxury, this skill, but a basic necessity in the Norse world. The first horse they mounted was often no taller than themselves, its coat warm beneath their small hands. They learned balance, control, how to move with the animal's rhythm. Riding was freedom, it was independence, it was the wind on your face and the earth rushing beneath you. Fact 45. Not all Norse people could read runes, but many children were taught to carve them into wood or stone. It was a way of learning letters, yes, but also of understanding the power of words, the magic of symbols. Runes were not just marks on parchment, they were entities in their own right, each one imbued with meaning and potency. Fact 46. Oral memory training began early. Children listened to stories told by the fire, tales of gods and heroes, of battles and betrayals. They repeated them back, word for word, verse after verse. The ability to recall these narratives accurately was not just a skill, but a social currency, a way of navigating their world and understanding their place in it. Fact 47. Archery training started around age 7 for boys. The Norse bow was a short self-bow, made from yew or ash. It required strength, precision, patience, virtues every young warrior needed to cultivate. They practiced on targets made of straw stuffed into old barrels, their arrows whispering through the air before thudding home. Fact 48. After spinning came weaving. Girls learned to work an upright warp-weighted loom, its wooden frame tall and sturdy against the floor of the longhouse. The wool they spun themselves was wound around the warp threads, then woven into cloth under their deft fingers. This fabric would become clothes for the family, warm and durable against the Norse winds. Fact 49. Wise. Boys who grew up near the sea learned to handle a small boat by age 10 or 11. They pushed off from the shore with their hands, feeling the pull of the water, learning to read wind and current like they would later read runes. The boat was an extension of themselves, a tool for exploration and survival. Sci-fi fact. Fishing techniques were passed down through generations. Children learned about nets, lines, traps, spears, each one suited to different fish, different seasons. They memorized where herring gathered in summer, how salmon ran upstream in spring. And they learned preservation methods too, smoking fish over open fires, salting them for winter storage. Fact 51. Stacks. Hunting was another essential skill. Tracking animals in snow required stealth and knowledge of beast behaviors. Setting snares took patience and precision. Children joined hunting parties as helpers before they were allowed to hunt themselves. They carried water skins, gathered firewood, skinned and butchered the kill under their elders' watchful eyes. Fact 52. Girls learned herbal medicine from older women. Which plants treated wounds, which reduced fever, which eased childbirth. This knowledge was passed down like a sacred trust. They spent hours in meadows and forests, learning each plant's name, its uses, its dangers. Their pouches soon bulged with leaves, roots, flowers. Fact 53. Desk. Animal husbandry fell mostly to children. Feeding and caring for cattle, sheep, goats, pigs was their responsibility. They started with the smallest animals, moving up as they proved themselves capable. It was not glamorous work, but it was necessary, and there was pride in doing what needed to be done. Fact 54. Norse. Norse mythology was considered essential knowledge for every child. Knowing the names of the gods, their relationships, the major myths. This was not just learning stories, it was understanding the very fabric of the world. Children listened wide-eyed as tales of Odin's wisdom, Thor's strength, Freyja's beauty were woven into the tapestry of their lives. Fact 55. Practical mathematics came naturally through trading and measurement. Children learned to weigh silver on scales balanced in the palm of their hand, count livestock in the paddock, measure grain in wooden buckets. Numbers became tangible things, tied to real-world actions rather than abstract concepts. Fact 56. Estimatic. Navigation was taught to boys who would sail. Reading stars, sun position, wave patterns, these were skills that could mean life or death on the open sea. They learned too how to interpret signs from nature. Birds flying inland might indicate land nearby. Calm seas followed by sudden squalls could herald a storm. Fact 57. Some boys apprenticed themselves to blacksmiths or other craftsmen. The forge was a sacred space in Norse culture, the smith almost magical figure. Children watched as metal was shaped under great heat and force, learning about transformation, about taking something raw and making it into something useful. See Fact 58. Bread making and cooking were communal tasks often assigned to older children. Grinding grain on the hand quern was hard work, repetitive, but it taught them discipline, rhythm, understanding of cause and effect. Kneading dough built strength in their arms, patience in their hearts. Fact 59. Cheese making, butter churning, preserving food for winter. These were skills passed down from mothers to daughters as soon as they were old enough. Children spent hours beside open fires, stirring curds with wooden spoons, watching milk turn into something solid, edible, lasting. Fact 60. Life. While rare, there were girls who chose warrior training. Lagertha herself is said to have disguised herself as a man to fight alongside men. These shield maidens were not just warriors, they were symbols of courage and defiance, living proof that strength came in many forms. Every child knew their stories, whispered late at night around the hearth, fueling dreams of heroism and freedom. And so it went on, this quiet education, this gentle guidance towards adulthood. The Norse way was not about grand gestures or loud declarations. It was about small hands holding tools, about wooden toys carved with love, about the smell of bread baking in a longhouse filled with laughter and warmth. It was about becoming, slowly but surely, part of something vast and ancient and alive. Fact 61. Children's clothing was almost identical to adult clothing, just smaller. Imagine tiny tunics of coarse wool, as earthy brown as the land itself, hanging loose on little frames. A cloak, simple and sturdy, fastened at the neck with a wooden pin, ready for chores or play. Leather shoes, not too stiff, waiting patiently by the doorstep until winter's chill arrived. Fact 62. Wool was the primary fabric. Every garment worn by a Viking child had been shorn from a sheep, its fleece carded and spun into yarn by the women of the household under the soft glow of oil lamps. The rhythm of their work, a whisper of wool against wool, lulling them all into the quietude of an evening well spent. Fact 63. Children went barefoot throughout the summer months, feet toughened like leather, dancing on sun-warmed earth, splashing in cool streams. Shoes were saved for winter and travel, tucked away carefully when not in use, their scent a blend of tanned hide and distant paths. Fact 64. Children's food was the same as adults, but simpler prepared. Barley porridge, steaming hot, sweetened with honey or berries, filling bellies ready for morning chores. Dried fish, its salty aroma a familiar comfort, paired with fresh bread, still warm from the hearthstone. Cheese curds, creamy and mild, plucked straight from the churn. Fact 65. Children drank buttermilk and whey, not water. Ale diluted, its faint bitterness, a rite of passage sipped carefully from wooden cups. Water was for washing, for quenching the thirst of animals, not for drinking unless boiled first over the fire's embers. Fact 66. The Norse breakfast was eaten after the first work of the day was done. Morning chores completed, hands washed in icy water, children gathered around the central hearth, eyes gleaming with hunger and accomplishment as they watched their mother ladle porridge into bowls. Fact 67. Farm responsibilities assigned to children by age. At 5, collecting eggs from the henhouse, careful not to disturb the hens, their tiny hands cradling each precious egg like a gift. At 6, herding geese, laughter echoing as they waddled faster than expected. Feeding pigs at 7, learning patience and care in equal measure. Fact 68. The harvest in late summer was all hands work. Every child, however small, helped bring in the crop that would keep the family alive through winter's harsh grasp. Tiny arms working alongside adults, their strength growing with each bundle of grain tied. Fact 69. Older children cared for younger siblings. A 7-year-old might have full responsibility for a toddler while parents worked, their bond deepening like the roots of ancient trees. The weight of care was heavy but not unbearable, tempered by love and shared purpose. Fact 70. The longhouse was the entire world of a Norse child in winter. One large room, shared with animals on cold nights, lit by oil lamps and the central fire's crackling dance. A sanctuary from the howling wind outside, filled with warmth, smoke, and the scent of home. Fact 71. Sleeping arrangements were simple and communal. Children slept on raised wooden platforms along the longhouse walls, wrapped in wool blankets as soft as clouds, fur pelts adding extra protection against the cold. The rest of the family nearby, their collective breaths a lullaby sung to the night. Fact 72. The dark Norse winter lasted for months. Children spent long evenings by the fire, learning, playing, listening to stories spun from old sagas. Their hands busy with small craftwork under lamplight's gentle glow, shadows dancing like spirits on the walls. Fact 73. Average Norse family size was 4 to 6 children, though many did not survive to adulthood. The longhouse echoed with their laughter, their tears, their tiny footsteps running from one end to another. A symphony of life, played out against the backdrop of endless winter nights. Fact 74. Grandparents, Amma and Afi in Old Norse, lived within the household and were primary teachers of traditional knowledge. Their wrinkled hands held not just wisdom, but also the weight of generations past. Stories whispered from their lips like secrets carried on the wind. Fact 75. Stepfamilies were common. Men died raiding, women died in childbirth. Children were often raised partly by step-parents, and the sagas treat this as normal. Love was not exclusive to blood relations. It was woven into every patchwork family like threads of gold in a tapestry. Fact 76. Children of raiders spent long summers without their fathers. The raiding season ran from May to September, fathers absent but present in stories told by the fire at night. Their return was anticipated with a joy that outshone even the sun's brightest rays. Fact 77. Children in Greenland and Iceland faced harsher conditions than their Scandinavian cousins. Colder winters, less farmable land, and the ever-present threat of starvation if the harvest failed. Yet they were tougher too, their spirits unbroken by harsh winds or meager provisions. Fact 78. Norse discipline. The sagas suggest children were expected to be tough and self-reliant. Crying and complaining were not encouraged. Tears dried quickly on cheeks flushed with effort, replaced by determination and grit, forged like steel in the face of adversity. Fact 79. Gifts given to children at feasts and ceremonies: a first knife, a handle worn smooth from tiny hands gripping it tightly, a carved toy, each meticulous detail speaking volumes about the artisan's love, a small piece of silver, a treasure to be hoarded like dragon's gold. Fact 80. Children participated in feasts and religious ceremonies from infancy. They watched blot sacrifices, heard toasts raised to Odin, understood from the beginning that the gods were real and present in their daily lives. Their young eyes witnessed the cycle of life and death, learning reverence alongside revelry. Fact 81. Center. At 15 years old, boys entered adulthood in Viking society, legally permitted to carry weapons. 13 or 14 was when girls reached womanhood, often marking the start of marriage negotiations. The transition was subtle, yet profound. Boys, around this age, began to bear the weight of their first real sword or axe, its balance unfamiliar yet promising. Girls found themselves in conversations about betrothals and households, a future that once seemed distant now looming close. Fact 82. A boy's first raid was his rite of passage into manhood. He rowed, he helped, but he returned changed. The salt spray on his face, the rhythm of the oars under his hands, the distant shore approaching, these became marks of his new status, etched into his consciousness. Fact 83. A boy's first weapon was not bought but given. Often a gift from his father or a respected elder, it was a moment of pride and responsibility. The blade might gleam in the firelight, reflecting the faces of those gathered around, their eyes filled with expectation. Fact 84. Marriage for girls was negotiated by families, yet Norse law granted them, some say. Custom might override law, but there were whispers of defiance, of young women who chose their own paths. In quiet corners they discussed their futures, their voices barely above the crackling fire. Fact 85. Wise. Thor's children, Modi and Magni, carriers of courage and strength, would survive Ragnarok to wield Mjolnir. Thrud, daughter of power, was counted among the Valkyries. In tales told by firelight, these gods' children were as real as the listeners themselves, their fates intertwined with theirs. Fact 86. Odin's children numbered many: Thor, Baldur, Vidar, and countless others. The Norse pantheon was vast, complicated, reflecting the families of the people who worshipped them. In quiet moments, parents might whisper these names to their children, tracing connections between gods and kin. Fact 87. Loki's offspring were fearsome: Fenrir, Jormungandr, Hel. Yet even these formidable beings had once been small, dependent on their mother's care. The stories of their birth and growth echoed those of human families, reminding listeners of the power hidden in childhood. Fact 88. Sigurd, Dragonslayer, was orphaned young. Fostered by Regin the Smith, he learned to forge his own destiny. In tales spun from shadows, Sigurd's childhood was one of hardship and courage, his foster father's teachings etched into every weapon he wielded. Fact 89. Egil Skallagrimsson composed his first skaldic poem at 3 years old. By 7, he had penned formal verse, committed his first killing, proving himself a boy of many talents. His childhood was a whirlwind of words and deeds, each one echoing into adulthood. Fact 90. Young Harald Fairhair vowed not to cut or comb his hair until he ruled all Norway. As a teenager, this vow became a symbol of his determination, his unkempt locks growing longer with each passing day, each day bringing him closer to his goal. Fact 91. Freydis Eriksdottir, daughter of Eric the Red, was fierce even in youth. Stories of her bravery and ruthlessness travelled far, echoing through longhouses and across seas. She was a force to be reckoned with, even as a child. Fact 92. Children who died young were buried with care. Archaeological finds show small graves filled with toys, food, animal companions, signs that the Norse believed these spirits needed comforts in the afterlife too. Seize fact. 93. A child buried at Fyrkat, Denmark, wore a complete set of jewelry. Her grave spoke not of diminutive adulthood, but of a person fully acknowledged, her small stature no barrier to respect and remembrance. Fact 94. Children who died before naming occupied an uncertain status. Some traditions held they became nature spirits, guardians of streams or forests. Their souls, like the winds that carried their whispers, were unpredictable, untethered by custom or law. Fact 95. Chi. Child thralls had no legal existence. Yet freeing a thrall child was considered pious, an act of mercy that might earn favor from gods and community alike. In quiet moments, parents might look at their own children, thanking the fates for the warmth of their homes, the security of their bonds. Is fact 96. Harald Fairhair fathered many children by multiple women. His sons fought each other for Norway after his death, their childhoods marked by power struggles and political maneuvering. Yet even amid such turmoil, there must have been laughter, play, moments of simple joy. Sefton 97. Norse mythology doesn't clearly answer where children went in the afterlife. Some scholars believe they went to Hell's realm automatically, regardless of deeds done or undone. Perhaps it was comforting to think that childhood innocence ensured a soft landing in the underworld. Fact 98. Childhood was preparation for adulthood. Every year counted. Each skill learned another step towards becoming a responsible warrior, homemaker, leader. There were no equivalents of letting children be children. Every moment was an investment in future roles and responsibilities. Fact 99. By 10 years old, Viking children knew how to butcher animals, navigate by stars, read weather patterns, preserve food, start fires even in the rain. Their world was harsh, unforgiving, yet they faced it with knowledge earned through trial and error, passed down from generation to generation. Fact 100. Viking children laughed, argued with parents, feared the dark, loved their dogs and carved toys. They listened to grandmother's stories by firelight, their small hands clutching at wooden horses or dolls. As they fell asleep, the Norse wind moved through pine trees outside their longhouse, stars turned slowly overhead, and the same quiet that cradles us all carried them into dreams. That quiet carries you now too, 1,000 years later, guiding you gently into sleep, just as it guided those children of old. Let your hands relax, let your breath deepen, let the fire's warmth and the wind's whisper lull you into rest. The Norse gods watch over your slumber, their stories echoing through time, reminding you that even in the darkest night, there is comfort to be found in ancient tales and gentle dreams. Sleep well, dear listener.